Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Eververse Podcast. And now, before we begin, I just wanted to talk a little bit about me and why I'm doing a podcast. So basically, a while back on my YouTube channel, I did kind of do like a mock trial of a podcast, and while it did sort of work for me, I enjoyed doing it. I didn't feel like I was doing it to its full potential. I don't think I was doing it as like a proper podcast in a way. I did a couple, I think two or three videos on it, and it didn't get many views, but I did feel like it would be interesting to do properly. I did my introduction video was on Japan, I think Norway as well. I just wanted to talk about those kind of things, like things people would be like, "Wow, wish I knew that before." So I wanted to also do a podcast based on my writing because I'm an author. I'm the author of the Into the Eververse series, with the first book, 1 to 13, came out last April, and the second one, Detected, will be coming out hopefully next year, which is very exciting. I wanted to use this platform to talk about my books, about my writing in general, to even read some of my work for my readers who were like, "Oh, I really want to know some more, give me some information." I want to be working on the law as well, because that's very cool. I also want to do a bit of a segment on just what's going on in the world, my own opinions on it, because I think what's great about the news is it does divide people, but it also makes people think, "Oh, I didn't think of it like that. You got a point." I also want to do like a little student kind of section, because I am a student. I go to Derby University, and as much as I love it, I love university really much. I like to talk about the downsides of it and why, sometimes it's hard to cope. I don't want this to be a safe space. You can send me like little stories you have that you want to share, or even just like a comment saying, "I need some help. Can I have a bit of comfort?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm on my way." Drop me an email at ajfogarty@gmail.com. You can go on my Twitter. I've got an author Twitter, which is probably the better one to contact me on. It's Eververse, and it's me. So if you just want it to be anonymous, drop me a message. Let me know how you're doing. I also want to talk about just general life, like things that can bring us together, like cats. I love cats. I have 2 cats who I love very, very much, and I love talking about them. I might even get them on, one time, just for a little meow. I keep coughing. I'm really sorry. Yeah, like I said, I just wanted to do that to. I think podcasts are a great way to bring people together. I think it's good if you're driving and you're on your own, you got a long journey, and you're like, "Oh, I'm a bit lonely. Let's pop an old podcast on." I also like, I haven't done it for long, but I do blog sometimes, and it's in the works still, I won't lie. But I learn about it all at university. I do writing and publishing. It's not a big course, but we are very like-minded, I will say, and I love everyone in my class. They're all great people. So yeah, like I said, this will be about writing, a bit about life in general, and anything. If you want me to talk about a certain topic, let me know, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. Now, because this is the first episode, we're not going to go too heavy into it. It's only going to be a short podcast. Be like maybe 20 half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour. It won't be long, but hopefully we'll have a lot of fun with it. So, to begin with, my name is Alice. I like my name. I always thought, does that make me cocky or arrogant to like my name? I was born on the 11th of October 2001 in a hospital, like a lot of people. The name Alice wasn't the original name my parents were going to give me. My mum liked the name Rhea Eve. My grandma, who fortunately passed away last year, said, "You can't name her that. It sounds like diarrhea." My mum was like, "Oh, wow, no, you're right. I can't name her that." One that apparently was a joke, but I did believe for a while. My mum said, "I want to call you Fanny," and I'm sure it's a lovely name, because a lot of people are called Fanny. But for the context of the school I went to, I would have been bullied. I would have been bullied really hard if I was called Fanny. My middle name is Jenna, and there was someone in my class called Jenna, and she used to joke, "You've nicked my name," and I would just say, "I'm older than you." So no, you stole it from me. I live in a small little village in the middle of, the Midlands in the UK. It's a nice village. isn't all here. We've got a pub, we've got a park. That's it. There isn't much in our village. But we are thinking of doing a community shop in the old chapel, which I think will be amazing. There is a book library next to it. It's an old telephone box, like those old red ones, and it's a book library or book exchange. You can go take some books in, take a couple out. I think that's really good. It's such a small thing, but I think it gets people talking, also gets people reading, which I love. Love reading, yes. I live with my dad, where obviously I have my 2 cats, Loki and Tess. They are amazing and I love them very much. They're still kittens. Loki is 8 months old at the end of the month, and Tess is 4 months. She is very small. She hasn't grown. I'm a bit worried that she hasn't grown. She has a couple of siblings. One of my mum's kittens is her sister, Betty, and her little brother, well, I say little, he's bigger than her, is my brother's cat. His name is Berlioz, and they're black cats, so that kind of suits him very well. My other cat, Loki, he is, I think it's a British long hair, but a lot of people just call them tuxedo cats. Love cats, they're amazing. People have such a negative opinion on cats if they don't own them, which I used to have a negative opinion, which is bad, because cats are actually quite great. Which I will cover on later. I don't want to be talking cats all the time, although I'm sure some of you will really love that. Reading. I love reading. I do a lot of reading for my course. I really started getting into reading properly last year during my first year of uni. I joined a book club, which I do recommend everyone do if they are a reader, even if it's for a little while, because you can get some new books. You can get a new vigoration of life with books, and which is very good. I love reading. I'm actually reading one of the Freddy Fazbear Fright books at the moment. It's one of the Five Nights at Freddy's books. I'm reading the first one at the moment, and if you are into those games, I do recommend them. They're very good books. I have about 50 Star Wars books, so that tells you all you need to know about me. I love Star Wars. But yeah, as a reader, you learn a lot of new words, which is great. I love learning new words. Like some people say, you shouldn't put big fancy words when you write, and I was like, why? It gets people get the thesaurus out. Thesauruses are great. You learn new words, you put them in the vocabulary. It's great. 10 out of 10. My book, 1 to 13, is part of the Into the Eververse series, which I said a little bit earlier. It is a blended genre book. When I first wrote it, I wrote it not as a joke, but I wrote it not the intention to publish it, but I just thought, you know what? Screw it, I'm going to publish it, it'll be great. and it worked. It did get published. It got published last year in April. Pretty sure it's the 31st of April last year. I haven't sold loads of books, but I've sold more than I expected, so I was very happy with that. The front cover has a dragon on it, and the back cover has a dragon on it, and so I was won over completely with the cover. I was like, dragons? Yes! As a blended genre book, it's got a bit of everything. It's mostly sci-fi fantasy, but it kind of leads into the adventure side and the action. It isn't for kids. Don't be a kid reading it. I'd say minimum 16, I'd say. But obviously, we don't have rated ages as we do for movies. Like, I was talking to this with a friend the other day. In the young adult section, the YA section, a lot of the books there that I've classed as YA, I wouldn't say they are. I saw Red, White and Royal Blue in the YA section of Waterstones, and I was like, why is that there? Get it out. Put it in the adult section. Go. Take it away. My second book should be coming out next year. It is called Into the Eververse Detected. It has a blue cover. That's all I'm saying about the cover. You'll have to wait and find out. If you follow me on Twitter, you will get to see it. So do run to Twitter. Follow me. I've got quite a few followers on Twitter, more than I ever thought I would. So I don't know what to do about that. I will read a bit of this a little bit later, but for now, I want to talk a bit more about my interests. As I said, I love Star Wars. Star Wars is great. Not without spoiling, the Book of Boba Fett has just finished. At least the first season, I loved it. It was amazing. 10 out of 10 for me. I know not everyone else will agree with that, but that's what opinions are all about, aren't they? Apart from Star Wars, I am really into gaming. I love gaming. Gaming is definitely something that I do a lot. I started a Twitch streaming account, I think last year. I'm not sure. I think it was It was over midway through, I know that. I haven't got a lot of subscribers yet, I've got about 10. I'm making my way up there though, I'm making my way. I also game on YouTube. I do stream on YouTube, but I mostly stream on Twitch. I've got quite a lot of videos on YouTube. I've got about, I think, maybe 164, 65 videos on YouTube, which I think's great. I do game a bit of everything. I've just finished streaming Life is Strange True Colours, so I do like playing those sorts of games. I do like the multiple choice games. I do love the solo campaign games as well. I love Red Dead Redemption 2. I love the Borderlands series. That's a great one. Skyrim, obviously. I do play Lego games. I won't lie. My favourite game? It's hard. Probably Red Dead Redemption 2, I'd say, is one of my favourite ones. But I also would say Life is Strange True Colours. I loved that one. That was amazing to play. I also streamed this game called Hue, which is quite a small game, I think. I don't think many people have played it. But if you like puzzle games that to do with colour, do recommend it. It's just called Hue, H-U-E. Nearly spelled it wrong then. It's basically like a platforming puzzle game that involves colours. And it's got a cute little story to it. I gasped. I was like, what? No. I'm also a collector. I do collect things. I collect Pop Funkos. I've got nearly 200? Maybe more than 200. I've got a lot. I've got a lot of Pop Funkos. I also collect the Black Series figures. The Star Wars ones. I've got loads. I've got all the Bad Batch ones. I am ready for everything. Like I said, I love writing. Love writing. The course I pick, it's quite a relatively new course. So if you're thinking, I don't know what to do for uni, I recommend my course, Writing and Publishing. It's really cool. You get to learn a lot about the industry as well. Since I've started, I've learned things that I'd never thought I would learn because I didn't think they were real. I was like, no, that can't be true. I learned that I think it's the first or second Thursday in October is a day called Super Thursday, and it's the day where most books get published. It's really interesting if you're into that sort of thing. I am. What else? What else can I talk about? Yes, I started a blog recently, which I thought would be a good idea. And weirdly enough, the next day when I was at uni, we were talking about blogs, and the teacher was like, "Has anyone got a blog?" And I was like, I have a blog. Which I'm going to be talking about my writing on. I've got one on Medium and one on The Blogger. If you'd like to look at them. There's not much on it. There's a post each on it because I've only just started them. I need to think properly what I'm going to talk about rather than just making it up, because that'd be a terrible idea, wouldn't it? So talking about my YouTube, my YouTube channel. I'm going to be streaming another game soon. I am torn between Republic Commando, which is a Star Wars game, and God of War. I'm not sure which one to do. I'm like, I don't play horror a lot. I don't. I do own horror, but I never play it. I'm too scared. Like, one of the ones I've got, Bending the Meat Machine, is not even that scary, but I'm a pussy. So I'm like, no, I won't do it to myself. Goodbye. Guten Abend. See you later. I'm such a wimp. Like the Resident Evil games, I want to play Village, but I'm too scared. So I just watch other YouTubers play it. I'm like, I don't have to play it, but these guys can, and I can pretend I did because I know all about it. Yes, big brain energy. I don't think there is much else to say just yet because I don't want to reveal everything about myself. I want to do that over the course. I want to be like a hit Netflix program, you know? I never know what to say. Should I say series? Speaking of which, obviously I've talked about Book of Boba Fett, but one of the shows that has recently come out that I really want to watch is Peacemaker. And the reason I can't watch it is because it's not out in the UK. And I'm really annoyed because I really want to watch it because I've heard such good things about it. And yet, no, I can't watch it because it's not out. How annoying! But at least we have the Star Wars shows. I will cope, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but oh well. Now, as we reach the 15-minute mark, which I'm really surprised I've been talking for that long, but that's another story, I'm going to read the first chapter of 1 to 13. My book. I'm so sorry if I stumble over the words. I get excited and then it just turns into mush. But yeah, I'm going to read the first chapter to, get you all inspired. As a warning, this book isn't for the faint of heart. It's not too bad in the first chapter, so don't worry. There might be swearing in the first chapter. I can't remember if I swore in the first chapter, but there is swearing in my books. If that's not your thing, I apologise. I read a tweet recently that said, "Do you need to swear in your books?" And I was like, yeah. Obviously, I understand that not everyone likes hearing swearing. That's why I warn people. When my book came out, I gave a copy to my nan. My nan's not too bothered. But I said to my granddad, I was like, "Granddad, you don't have to read it." He was like, "No, I will." And I was like, "No, you really don't have to." And he was like, "No, I will." I was like, "Dad, Granddad is swearing." And he was like, "Oh!" Never mind, I ain't reading it. But I think he will eventually. He'll be like, "Can my heart take it?" It will now. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to read the first chapter. That's a bookmark. Why is there a bookmark there? Let me just open it up. It is available pretty much everywhere. It's on Amazon. It's on the Austin Macaulay website, which is who I published it with. It's on Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, if you want to go there. I love Waterstones. I have a card, and it got recently changed to a student card, and I was like, it's blue. Wait, is it blue? Yeah, it's blue. It's blue. Yeah. So anyway, this is chapter 1, The Harshest Winter. I was once told that sometimes the hardest task in life is the one where you have to be brave, where you have to know there is going to be pain, but you try to complete the task anyway. The mind is one of the most powerful things in the world. You just know how to wield it. Like how a blacksmith knows how to craft the most powerful of weapons. I remember something that was whispered to me once. This person was strong and was one of the most important and influential beings I would ever know. He told me that the mark of maturity is known when you try to understand a situation instead of trying to battle it. In youth, I never quite understood what he meant, but now that I am older, I do. If only I had done a long time ago. I was such a fool. I wanted to write down in words everything that had happened to me in my life, so that one day you'd understand, wherever you will be. I had a problem, though, when I first put ink to paper. I didn't have the foggiest clue how to begin this woeful tale, but then I knew. All I had to do was write the truest sentence I knew that would set you off on the journey of my life. Some believe that the best place to start is the beginning. I, however, don't. I suppose I should start on the day that began to collapse, where everything began to collapse, when everything began to crumble underneath me. It was a very long time ago, I must confess, but it was a day I don't think I would ever forget. Snow. There was abundance of snow that day. It fell from the heavens, falling to the ground, turning it white. I remember that it was one of the coldest days in history, but that did not stop my brother and I venturing out into the freshly fallen snow, leaving our footprints in the blanket, like words on a piece of parchment. You know, the strangest thing about winter is that there are so many connotations and meanings that come with that particular season. Some people see beauty, while others see death. A child would see the wonder in the white, whereas adults would see the blistering cold that could cause people to perish. We were children at this current time, so it was the wonder that we saw. My brother was my twin. He was my best friend. I loved that we could spend every waking minute with each other and not become bored. I would have spent longer with him if I'd have known what was going to happen that day, but because I didn't know what was going to unfold that day, I could do nothing more than what was the norm. I believe the year was 1839. We were 6 years old, and it was the month of January. A rather cold January that year, I might add. The morning started like any other. Our nanny, Ursula, would wake us up sauntering into our bedroom and opening the curtains. The brightness of the boiling sun would blind us, and we would always complain about the pain that welled in our eyes. We would get out of bed and dress. Adam would always wear his coloured shirts and trousers that matched in shades. That day he wore blue. I, on the other hand, would always wear a dress and an apron over the top of it, my hair in plaits falling down the side of my face. My favourite dress to wear was green, and the apron on that day was white. It usually was. My mother liked me to wear those clothes, and never wanted to disobey her wishes, for in fear of... Ursula would then herd us out of the bedroom, and we'd go downstairs into the dining room, where our parents and older sister would already be sitting. My sister Crystal was much older than we, and had blonde hair that she would always have up and out of the way of her sky-blue eyes. Crystal wasn't a person who would mess around or smile all that much, even as a child. I never knew it was who she was or what our parents wanted her to be. Father was always hard on her, and Mother never had the courage to disagree. During my days now, wherever I was at the time I wrote this, I would often think of her and wish that I have more of a connection with her family. Never as easy. I would never get in her way, as she would complain and shout, then proceed to walk out of the room I was in. I don't know why. It was as though she knew some dark secret I was unaware of. Even if she would talk to me, I highly doubt she would spill her secrets that she kept so very close to her chest. She was stubborn like that. My mother and father were also sitting at the table. My mother's face was soft and full of love, compassion, and happiness. In contrast, father was very similar to my sister. In my childhood, it was a rare occasion to see my father smile, or even let loose a single syllable of laughter. I never would have known he loved my mother if he didn't put a kiss on her cheek every so often, but sometimes I felt as though he was obligated to kiss her. Zerafina was a loving mother, and would read my brother and I a story, or sing us to sleep on some nights. Her hair was the same colour as mine, black like a raven's wing. Our eyes were different. Mine were like emeralds, and hers were blue, a beautiful blue that captivated her own beauty. As we entered the room, Mother welcomed Adam and I to the table to eat our breakfast, which was prepared by the house chef and other servants. Since our family was so wealthy, we could always afford the most delicious ingredients, even the exotic kind, to use. We sat down on the chairs next to each other, and I could feel Crystal's icy glare creep on me, as usual. Father was reading the morning newspaper, and hardly looked up from it for the entire duration of the meal. He hardly talked to us in the morning anyway. I didn't notice as much when I was younger, but as an adult, Mother would always remark on how her husband would only show any ounce of delight when he was close to leaving for another one of his voyages. Charles Evelyn was a businessman, and a harsh one at that, and one thing that his heart loved more than anything was money and wealth. He wore an ugly sneer on his face, and he wore it well. He looked disgusted so often that I couldn't tell what his true face was. The Evelyn family had always been rich. We never had to worry. We had the wealth of money of finery, but it would seem that it was never enough for my father. He always wanted more. Pure greed and nothing more. Mother was always different, though. All she wanted was love and family, and sometimes at night I would see her cry. She always wanted to hide the tears. It hurt me deeply that she felt like she had to hide. I believe that it was in fear of my father. Seraphina would only cry when she was alone. Why did she think that she had to look strong in front of us? I knew she cried more after this day, and so did I, and like her, I knew how to hide my pain, and sometimes I wasn't even aware of it. I took the last mouthful of my breakfast and placed the cutlery beside my plate. I waited for Adam to finish before I spoke up. I played with my apron, twiddling the cotton through my fingertips. I could feel the disapproving glare aimed at me. Mother? Mother looked at me from her plate and batted her eyes. Yes, Alice. Please may we go outside and play? Mother looked to father and waited for his approval. He poked his head up from behind the newspaper. Have you any lessons today? No, father. It's Saturday today. He paused and I gulped. He always frightened me with his silence. I could hear him grunt under his breath. Very well. I looked to the side and saw a smile raised on Adam's face. You two are excused, Mother's gentle voice reassured us. We hopped down from our seats and both of us thanked Ursula as we left the dining hall, but before we were completely left the room, we heard Mother's voice pipe up. Make sure you two wrap up, otherwise you'll catch your death. We will, we shouted back in unison, unaware that her words would become ironic after that day. As we walked through the long and windy corridor, we saw our great-grandmother Alison wander down with a walking stick by her side. She was frail on the outside, but inside, Alison was a wise woman, and had a very strong personality that would come out of her in the form of a thick Scottish accent. Her wispy hair was down as always, trailing down her back. The orbs of her eyes sparkled blue, with a certain untamable wisdom that could not be taught. You were either born with it or not. She moved from a small island outside of Scotland to Sussex when she was a young woman with her husband Solomon and a newborn baby daughter, Celeste, my great-aunt. Solomon often stayed in his bedroom or studied during the winter as he detested the cold, and Celeste lived in Glasgow, but would sometimes visit us in the warmer seasons. Alison didn't notice us and went into one of the many drawing rooms. I shrugged and looked at Adam. We continued down the corridor until we reached the cloakroom. I went inside the room and was almost lost in the many coats and hats and scarves inside the room. Our items were in the far corner, and I was swarmed in them as I brought them back outside into the corridor. We put on our coats, which were thick and blanketed as in warmth. Our ears were protected in the hats, our little fingers in the gloves, and our necks in the embrace of the scarves, and then we opened the door to enter the wonderland of snow that was awaiting us. My future lay before me in the form of a blanket of snow. I had to be careful how I tread, because this was the path that would define me and my life. But I had no clue at the time. If I had any idea what would happen that day, I would have stayed inside the comfort of my home and be snuggled beside Adam in front of the fire. We would be listening to my mother's gentle music as she read us a story of adventure. There were always happy endings in the books, and she would read, but unfortunately, life is not full of happy endings, and in my life there were very few. As I've said, though, I didn't know what would happen, so I ran outside to play in the snow without a care or worry in the world. Snowflakes fell onto my rosy cheeks and melted into the skin, lightly freezing me. I watched the scene in front of me. The many trees and bushes in the garden were covered in white blankets, and the shades of green were vibrant against the snow. The garden of our house was huge and stretched over the surrounding lands, full of life and nature. In the middle of the garden lay a fountain crafted of marble, with a dragon in the centre with an orb in its mouth. It had a silver shade to it, but I never paid much mind to it. Small creatures would make their homes in the trees, bushes, and other shrubbery. In the spring, it was easy to spot the rabbit, hiding in their leaves. The perimeter of the garden stopped just before the woods. Mother warned us not to go in. We never did. We never reached that far anyway. On that day, though, the wind was stronger than usual. It pulled us away from the flower beds that lay dormant beside the conservatory, past the frozen fountain that was in the centre of the garden, and the wind stopped next to the family cemetery. Our families endured many years of life on this earth, and when Alison moved away from her home on the island, she had designed the family's resting place, while Solomon built the house. I always thought it was odd that the graveyard was finished before the house, but Alison was a slightly strange woman, which seemed to be a common feature of the Evelyn women. My great-aunt Bethany, great-uncle Elliot, and great-uncle Kai were buried in there. I once asked how they did die, and after the answer that Alison gave, I never asked again. She was distraught. I didn't know how she felt about them, otherwise I would have never brought it up. But I was a child then, and children do not know any better. To this day, I never found out what happened to them. I doubted that I would ever find out. Solomon was buried there too, and Alison had placed her grave there, even though that she was still very much alive, and would most likely be on this earth for several more years. Alison would often tell stories about her husband and how long she longed to be reunited with him again, but the gods would not let her depart this life. Even at the age of 90, Alison had more life in her than most. For some reason, which I do not know the answer to, my family did not believe in the same gods as other people did in Sussex. We were not Christian, we did not follow the normal traditions of our neighbours, not like we had any either. Our home was in the middle of nowhere, after all. I believe that we had Norse heritage, but Alison would talk about a land known as Internalaw. But according to my father, there was no such place as that. It was just the ravings of an old woman. I loved those stories, though. They just seemed so magical. Oh, how I wish they were real. Out in the garden, Adam and I played in the snow. The frost touched our noses and the cold fluttered at our skin, as though it was asking us to play some more, and so we did. If only I had turned around. If only I noticed that we were too close to the woods. Maybe he'd still be here. Laughing and running around, I wish that day continued as such, but wishes don't come true, do they? The snow was no longer the shade of white that day. I wish that someone told us not to go outside. Oh, why? Why did I ask? Today I hate the silence. Silence is deafening. To be trapped in silence is to be trapped with one's own thoughts. Sometimes, though, you need the silence around you so the mind and the body can be reconnected. Sometimes we need the silence so that we can explain what the heart is feeling, but the silence, for me, is the most powerful scream that can be conjured from the soul. That day was so long ago, but it was one of those days that you can't forget, and I won't. I lost him that day, and it took me so long to find him again, but he wasn't the same person as the one I lost. I just want him back. I remember as we played, the world around us had grown quiet. It was far too quiet. I could hear us breathe. At the time, of course, I thought nothing of it. The world around us was usually quiet. Then, as I finished building the snow fort we were creating, Adam wandered off to find some sticks and stones. I was building for a long time, and when I finished, I knew something wasn't quite right. Adam had been gone for a very long time, and he still wasn't back. I dropped the snow I was holding, hearing it crunch as it hit the wall, and walked away from the fort. I looked around the garden, and I saw nothing. There was no trail in the snow that led back to the house, so he must have gone the other way. But the other way was in the direction of the woods. I wasn't supposed to go that way. Now, right then, I could have easily walked back to the house and asked for help, but my father would have yelled at both of us, so I went to look for Adam on my own. A foolish mistake indeed, as I eventually came to learn. I'd never been that close I had never been that close to the woods before. I didn't really know why. Father informed us that it was dangerous and that children should never go out there alone, no one should ever go out there alone. Mother sure assured us, though, that there was nothing in there that could even remotely harm us. How wrong she was. As I got closer to the woods, the darker the sky became. My eyes darted around the world, and I saw no glimpse of my brother. I should have turned back then, but I didn't. I was such a fool, a young childish fool who should have known better. You left me alone, as did everyone else. I cannot breathe as I'm suffocating from loneliness. I hurt and sigh because I had no one left. You left me first, but they must have followed you. You were always the leader, and I was the sheep that could no longer follow. I shouted his name until I couldn't shout any more. I didn't know how much time had passed, but I knew it had been an eternity. I wasn't going to give up. He was alive. He had to be. I wandered through the snow with determination. I had to try and find him, even if it took me all night. I reached the edge of the garden and stood by the wall that was the barrier between my garden and the wood. I let out a sigh and climbed over the stones and landed on the other side with a thump. Dazed, I shook my head to get the snow off my face. I rose to my feet and looked around. I had never been inside of the woods before, but they were beautiful. You could hear the birds sing and the small woodland creatures scurry around on the earthy ground. It was almost peaceful. Yet I had a task, so the peacefulness would have to wait. I wandered through the woods for a while, but there was no sign of Adam. Then I heard the most awful sound of shrieking I'd ever heard. The sound still haunt my dreams to the day. I picked up my speed and ran in the direction. I couldn't find anything. I paused when the shrieking stopped. I waited. Then it happened again. This time the sounds were louder. It was the sound of someone screaming. I ran again. I ran faster and faster until it stopped again. The birds were screeching loudly and the flutter of their wings were as loud as the beating of my heart inside my chest, itching to break through my skin. I could hear my breathing increase in volume, and the anxiety was making it harder to concentrate, and the breathing began to come out in rapid pants. I stopped beside a nearby tree to catch my breath and to compose myself. I crept out beside the trunk and silently stepped through the snow. I wondered if I was quieter, I would be able to find Adam easier. It didn't make it easier. I could see the fog come out of my mouth. It was freezing, and I could see the faint sight of ice growing on my gloves and sleeves. As I walked further into the woods, I began to see a trail of footprints. They were similar to my own. I gasped, coming to a realization I knew that Adam has the same size feet as me. They must be his, so I started to follow them. I followed them for a long time, but something dawned on me. I walked past the same tree nearly 3 times. I'd been going in circles. I was lost. How was I supposed to find him now? Another horrid thought bloomed in my mind. How was I supposed to get home? Oh, I was going to be in so much trouble after this, if I managed to ever get home. Then, after I thought I lost all hope, I saw something in the snow. I crept closer to the sight. I didn't know what it was, but I saw something that was an image that would never left me. Even as an adult, I saw the red when I closed my eyes to go to sleep. I moved closer and closer. I could feel the tears well up in my eyes. My mouth was agape in shock and terror. There was blood stained on the snow. The red was so vibrant against the snow. I didn't know what to do. My knees gave out, and I landed in the snow next to the patches of blood. I wasn't completely sure whose blood it was, but all the clues were there. Adam. It must have been Adam's blood. Everyone else was inside. Oh no. Everyone else was inside. And we weren't. Who was going to know that I was out here? Father said that children should not be alone in the woods, and I was. I clambered to my feet and backed away fearfully from the scene, but before I could turn around, I felt something sharp rip through the cloth of my coat and dig into my back. Out of shock, I did not scream, albeit I gasped in pain. I fiercely snapped around, and the sight that was in front of me frightened me to my core. I felt myself shaking, trembling in absolute fear, but I hadn't the foggiest clue what to do. I couldn't move from my spot, and I had to find the will inside to run. The wind picked up at that moment. To me it seemed as though the wind was trying to warn me of the danger, yet I did not know where I was. My head shot up and I tried to see where I was, but the storm around me made it impossible to see. I was blinded by the hundreds of snowflakes that were soaring through the sky. Although everything around me was white, I could see the blood. I prayed it wasn't his and that it was mine instead, but I could not think of that in that precise moment. I had to run. Where should I run? I couldn't run further forward as the claws would just chase me, but I couldn't run home, otherwise my family would be in great danger. It was a conundrum. My ebony lock slapped me in the face as I ran away, and I knew I shouldn't have looked back. I was always such a curious being. Even in the face of danger, I would search for more. Arguably, that day defined me as a person. On that day, I really became the girl I was meant to be. But I didn't know it then. All I wanted was to forget that day, but was constantly reminded of what I lost. A mangled limb was dragging me down. The claws had attacked me once again, but they sliced my leg, leaving multiple gashes against my pale skin. So much blood was splattered against me in the snow. A horrible sight indeed, but in the distance I could see the outline of the wall I had climbed over. Panting, I raced through the snow. It was a difficult task, and I was so very close. Just as I placed my hand on one of its cracked stones, I felt the claws wrap around my wounded leg. Screaming, I was pulled down onto the ground, my chin grinded against the wall, leaving a graze. I cried out in pain and was dragged violently through the snow. Just then, when I thought all hope was lost, I heard a familiar sight climbing over the wall. Their feet landed onto the battered snow. Looking up, I couldn't quite see who it was through my blackening vision. I saw the figure fight the creature that had attacked me. I could have cried out in relief, but my energy was failing me. I felt my head loll against the snow and everything turned black. The pain that comes with loss is not one to take lightly. Pain comes in beats, gradually becoming more damaging until you learn to let go. Darkness. That was the first thing I remember. I felt the cold spread across my face and I trembled. The world around me was bleak and painfully quiet. I couldn't hold back the tears that were welling in my eyes, but they never fell and I was landed on the cracked ground. I felt arms pull me, and I was lifted up and placed against a familiar chest. I would have given my gratitude, but I was already passed out. The thing about darkness that had always piqued my curiosity was the way it pulls you into its hold and brings you down, suffocating you until you can't open your eyes. For weeks after that day, I would not be able to sleep when there was some amount of light in my room, even if it was just a fragment. When I woke up again, I knew that something was terribly wrong and out of place. I was in my room, but Adam wasn't there. A dark and daunting truth unveiled itself when I saw the lily on his bed. I closed my eyes and pulled my legs to his chest. I holded onto a ball and let loose a few stray tears onto my knees. I'd learnt a long time ago how to master the art of crying silently. Evelyn's don't cry, my father would often remark. My eyes widened at the thought of father. What would he do when I walked out of my room? He would never believe the truth if I told him. I couldn't move. Maybe if I stayed in my bed, he wouldn't ask me. He didn't come into our room an awful lot. When he was home, he worked. When he was away on his trips, he worked. It was only work that sufficed his heart. I lifted my head up when I heard the door creak open. Fearing the worst, I forced my head back down onto my knees. If I could see who it was, they couldn't either. I felt something plop onto my bed and snuggle against my leg. I slowly popped my head up and see it was my cat. I unravelled myself and patted my leg for my cat to come closer. Chess was her name. I was given her afterward in my first chess game with my uncle Svar. Svar was my mother's older brother. He didn't visit an awful lot, but it was always a pleasure to see him. He lived with his wife, Mariette, and 3 children. The 2 sons, Edmund and Percival, were Crystal's age, which is 14, and Inga was a couple of months younger than Adam and I. Edmund and Percival did not always see eye to eye with me on many subjects. Just because they're older than me doesn't necessarily mean they're right. Inga, on the other hand, was much easier to get along with. She wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but she had spirit. Inga always liked to play with me and would tell stories of her home. The Luna Hill residence wasn't as large as Everwood, and did not have as much land either, but it was situated by a town in the mountains where the most beautiful silk was sold. Aunt Mariette would often wear such material when she visited, and would give some of her purchases to us. Although she was extremely beautiful, she was not the kind to be narcissistic about herself, unlike my Aunt Petal. Petal was the oldest of the Luna Hill siblings, and it was clear to me that she wasn't the most polite person in the world. Mother would often say that Crystal was very much like Petal when she was that age, but I didn't think it was a compliment. I sat on my bed, my eyes red and puffy from crying, stroking chest and softly smiling as she purred. I sighed. I did not know what to do. I could step out into the corridor and be frightened by father, or I could stay in my room and be frightened by the fact I would eventually have to leave. I shook my head in annoyance and jumped off my bed. Looking down, I saw that I was in my nightgown, and the cuts all over my body were faded away, as if they were never there to begin with. Fascinating. However, I was confused. How long had it been? Did it even happen? Where was Adam? I had so many thoughts rushing through my head that I was getting a migraine. I placed a hand onto my temple, my eyes scrunched together in bewilderment. I walked around the marble floor of my room until I reached the door. I closed my eyes for a moment and took a deep breath to compose myself. My shaking hand fitted itself against the door knob and I turned it. Creaking, the door opened and I stepped out. A frozen wind blew through the corridor and I shuddered at the sudden descent in temperature. I pulled my arms to my chest as my small feet tapped against the carpeted floor. I couldn't hear many voices except for the maids conversing with one another. A few dipped their heads as I walked past them. Their eyes were solemn and glistening with sympathy. I ignored them and continued to walk. I reached the stairway and I held onto the rail as though my life depended on it. Taking a step at a time, I wandered down the stairs. My leg twinged slightly when I was put pressure on it, but it would never hurt as much as it had done when those fiendish claws sliced into my tender skin. Grimacing at the memory, I pushed those thoughts aside and carried on descending down the stairs. As I reached the bottom, I heard voices coming from the main drawing room. I heard my mother's soft voice talking to my sister and someone else. I sneaked around the door and peeked through the thin gap that was in the middle of the door and the wall. I didn't think anyone could see me, so I stood there with an eye watching the scene in front of me. My mother's face was low and pale. It looked as though she had not got a good night's sleep in a long time. By my father's adamance, I could tell that he'd been struggling over the duration. I still had no idea how long I'd have been asleep for, and I knew I wouldn't get any answer if I remained hidden behind a door. I did wait a little longer, though. Through the gap in the wall, I could see Crystal trying to console Mother, but to no avail. Crystal has never been one to show empathy. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach. I didn't want to be alone in a room with her because I knew that she would blame me for what happened that day. I was blamed for a lot of things when it came to Crystal, even though it may not have been me to blame. On the sofa, I saw a welcoming sight. Aunt Imogen. Imogen Evelyn was Father's elder sister. Like most of my family, she did not reside in Everwood. I was never certain where she lived, but she had quite the obsession with reptiles. She'd always bring one with her when she visited, and right beside her on the sofa was a long, slick snake, its tongue slithering against her hand. I was never one for slithery creatures, but my aunt's snakes were friendly and were almost human. I wanted to run to my aunt, but I was fearful what she would say. Then a vision flashed in my mind of the figure that had rescued me, and as I gazed over to her gloves that were on the sofa arm, those were the same gloves that she'd been wearing. It was my aunt who had saved me. Maybe she might know what happened to Adam. I held my breath, though. She may know, but I highly doubt Father would let her help. I shook my head. Someone had to save my brother. I wished I could go, but there was no other way I'd be able to rescue him all by myself. I was too little. When I first placed my pen onto the paper, as I wrote my life out, I was reminded of a phrase that a friend of mine would say. He'd say, although one may be small, we all start out as seeds. It just depends on what tree we bloom into. A beautiful phrase from someone who I had admired. We weren't friends, though, at the beginning, but I'm glad about what happened to us. I was told that writing things down would make the pain go away, but the more I write, the more I remember there were some things I would rather forget. Alas, I continue my story. So after a deep breath, I stepped into the room. I opened the door, and the creaking sound against the females in the room turned their heads at me. I bit my lip. Mother softly smiled to me and reached a hand out. I approached her and took a hold of her gentle fingertips. I sat down beside her on the sofa that was facing opposite from Imogen. I did not utter a single syllable, but my head dipped downwards, staring at my feet. I was, for the first time, fearful of my mother, what she would say. Was she angry at me? I couldn't bear the thought of having another disappointed parent. I felt her hand tilt my chin upwards so that I was looking into her sapphire eyes. Like the way shouldn't look into the sun, you could be blinded by its beauty. And no one breathed a word. I could hear my sister's retreating footsteps leave the room, and Imogen was sipping at her whiskey. I could hear the sound of fire crackling, the wind tapping on the windows, and Chess peering at my mother's feet. I could smell the tea resting in its cup, the pleasant smell of perfume, and the sweet scent of the treats that laid on a silver plate on the coffee table. My senses had become heightened. I could hear every minute whisper and smell each and every microscopic thing. A pain in my head peaked as I painfully waited for my mother to speak. Father always said that a child should hear first and speak second. A child should only speak when the adult has finished speaking. Although he was harsh and cold to me, he was my father, and so I heeded every order, every demand to be gave. And then finally, my mother opened her mouth to speak. Alice, darling, how do you feel? Cold. Mother placed her hand on my cheek. Oh, you gave us such a fright. The smile dropped from her face. Alice, why were you in the wood? I was only following Adam. I'm sorry, Mother. I shouldn't have gone, but I thought I could find him. Alice, you should have come inside and found someone. I sighed. I know, Mother, but no buts. I nodded. There was no point in arguing. Mother, she nodded. Where is Adam? Mother's face paled and her breath began to tremble. Alice, I'm so sorry, child, but we couldn't find Adam. Your father rounded some of the guards to try and find him. We haven't found him yet. Is it my fault? I asked. I didn't quite know what to think. Shaking her head, Mother laced her fingers through my curly, wavy black hair. Of course it isn't. Then why is father gone? Over the next few weeks, I sat in my room in silence for most of the time. Mostly I wished that day hadn't happened and Adam would still be here. I would look over to his bed and the tears began to fall once again. I never even got to say goodbye. But how do you plan that? You can't, I guess. We had so much planned. We always said when we grew up we would travel the world and see everything that we could. Adam always fancied the idea of visiting the shrine that our ancestors pray to on that island that ours grew up on. One night when Adam was gone, I was sitting on the window bench in my room, looking through the night sky. Alison ambled into the room and dropped onto the seat next to me. She looked at my face and opened her arms. I crawled over and snuggled to her chest. Go and sleep, little one. I shook my head. No, Grandmama, I miss him. Is that why you were looking at the stars? I looked up at her and she wore a gentle expression on her face. I used to do the same when I lost my children, you know. Do you think Adam's gone? Alison's eyes darkened slightly. I don't know, but you can't give up hope, and you always can't raise your hopes too high. I don't know what happened. We were just playing. I turned around for a moment, he was gone. Gone, you know. I don't know what to do. I know, little one, I know. I felt a tear spill from my green eye and fall down my face, splashing onto my nightgown. I think there's something wrong with me, Grandmama. What do you mean? I don't know. I feel strange. At night, I feel the claws around my leg again. And then it feels like my skin is on fire. I look down and I see scales. Black scales. It's so strange. Alison brought her hand to her face and thought for a moment. I watched her. I could always be open about anything when it came to Alison. She was old, but she had an amount of wisdom that could rival Athena. I tell you what, I'll consult my books. If I find anything, I'll let you know. Thank you, Grandmama. You won't tell anyone? Of course not. You'll be our secret little one. I pulled my arms around her frame, and she brought me to her chest. We bid each other a good night. I watched her leave my room, and I returned to the window. Sighing, I watched the stars twinkle and glisten on the night's canvas. I always preferred the night than the day. A night sky could hold so many more stories than the one of the day. No star is the same, and that's what I loved. They were all unique. I saw a shooting star across the sky. Quickly, my eyes slammed shut and I made a wish. I had so many things to wish, but I could only use one. I thought long and hard about what I could wish for. I could wish for Adam's return, but in my heart I had a feeling that he would come back without my help. Just as I was about to make my wish, I heard voices come from the corridor. I looked on the clock on the mantel. It was really late. I blew my wish out into the open air, but there was no time left for the wishes. I ran back to my bed, always tripping over my feet. I threw the covers over and slid inside. I closed my eyes just in time as the door opened. There was an uncomfortable silence as the person in my room checked to see if I was asleep. I heard them come closer, and I felt the hot breath touch my face. I didn't grimace, though, otherwise my colour would have been blown. They left the room again, but I did not move. I stayed in the same frozen spot until the next morning when I would wake again. And that, everybody, is the end of chapter 1. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed that. I enjoyed reading that. I got really into it. Next time, we will talk about something else. I'm not sure what yet, but it will be good, I promise. I hope to do this every Friday. I hope. Like, upload a new episode every Friday. Not sure when, but I'll try and keep a schedule so it's better. If you would like to hear chapter 2, let me know. I could read something else. I'm not entirely sure yet. I might do a little sneak peek for y'all for a little bit of the next book. I haven't decided yet, but I'm sure it will be good. So if you did enjoy today, let me know. Remember, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. There's no price, obviously. I do make some gaming content, so it'll be very nice. I am going to be streaming Little Misfortunes soon, so if you would like to see that, then do have a little look. Remember, you can also follow me on Twitter for updates. Also, you can add me on my my author Instagram as well. It's called Alice Singing and Writing. It's just that, all one word, no little capitals or anything. Tumblr, I'm on Tumblr as well. Into the Eververse is my Tumblr. If you just type that in, it should come up. If not, then I'm an idiot and I apologise. I hope you did enjoy today. I really enjoyed today, and I hope this becomes a weekly thing because it seems like a really good idea. So until then, guys, I shall see you next time. Bye.